Hey everybody, what's up and welcome back. If you're new here, I'm Liz. And today we're going to be discussing more identified and solved cases that have happened this year. I know I already did a 4-part series on these, but there were more that have been identified and solved that I have found, so I wanted to share them with you, especially for this Vlogmas. Also, just a lovely PSA about why I've been MIA. I know I put it in a post here on YouTube, but it's the holiday season. I'm also a parent, so if you're also a parent, you know that things get a little wild. Also, if you hear any wind in the background, I am so sorry. There's a major windstorm happening today, so if you hear any like, yeah, that's why. But anywho, let's get into today's true crime cases. All right, so number 1 on our list is the murder of Susan Trice and Aaron Glammer. Now, almost 40 years after the murders of Susan Trice and Aaron Glammer, this happened in 1983, their cases have officially been solved. Joseph George Sutherland appeared in court after police announced that he was charged with first-degree murder in connection with their murders. He was charged with first-degree murder. Aaron and Susan were both found in their homes. They were both sexually assaulted and stabbed to death in 1983, and these murders happened within 4 months of each other. Now, investigators in the case were able to reveal that genetics is what helped crack this case and led them to the arrest of Sutherland. The Tortoise Reserve Doe. So, in July of 2001, the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department were contacted in regards to the discovery of human remains found near that 115 in US 93. Or maybe it's the I-15. This discovery was found near Apex Road. Now, the autopsy was performed and ruled that the cause of death was likely homicide. Now, this Caucasian male, who was likely between the ages of 35 to 45 in age, at the time of his death. Unfortunately, these remains couldn't be identified at the time of discovery, and the investigative work for this John Doe also didn't produce any leads to who this was. Now, after exhausting all leads necessary, this case went cold, unfortunately. Now, October 2021, the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, they teamed up with Othram. And they teamed up with Othram to help with identifying this John Doe. Now, with the help of genome sequencing, after reanalyzing this John Doe's skeletal remains, they made a genealogical profile to help identify him. Othram then was able to give leads to the detectives on the case. With the information, they then were able to contact potential family members, and with using DNA, they then were able to confirm the identity of this John Doe with a sample from his biological sister. Richard Wayne Guaro was reported missing back in 1996 after he failed to return home from a trip he took to Las Vegas, and this was on November 18th of 1996. Number 3 is the murder of Stephanie Isaacson. So in June of 1989, Stephanie Isaacson left to walk to El Dorado High School, just a normal walk for her. Now, she would frequently take a shortcut through a vacant lot off of Stewart Ave and Lynn Lane. This was the quicker way to school. Now, flash forward to when school let out that afternoon, Stephanie's dad started to worry. Stephanie didn't come home when she normally did, so he was really, really confused because she was typically a routine person. He then phoned the school and he hoped that they would give him information about where Stephanie would be. And this is when the school in fact told him that Stephanie never made it to school that day. So police were then contacted and a missing persons report was filed. A local search would be made and conducted, and this included canvassing the area around her normal route. And it's during this route that they unfortunately would find Stephanie in that vacant lot. It was determined that she was sexually assaulted before being strangled to death. Now, for years, this would remain unsolved, and her killer was never identified at that point. That was until the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department worked with Othram, again in 2021, just like with the Tortoise Reserve Doe. They would again use genome sequencing to build a genealogical profile of the DNA that they found on Stephanie. And with this DNA, they were able to identify that Darren Roy Marchand was the perpetrator in her case. Unfortunately, Marchand died in 1995 via suicide. He has also been tied to multiple other crimes due to the use of the DNA profiling. Number 4 is the 1993 Fairfax Jane Doe. So in December of 1993, some landscapers in Centerville, Virginia would stumble upon a gruesome scene. They would find skeletal remains in a shallow grave. After detectives arrived on the scene, they would gather evidence to try and build a case for this Jane Doe. They would also find items that they believed belonged to her. This includes jewelry, deteriorated clothing, a red comb, and a yellow beret. The medical examiner would determine during her autopsy that she suffered from multiple stab wounds or knife wounds to her upper body. And it was also thought that she was about 5 feet to 5'3" in height and approximately about 28 to 39 in age. That was her rough approximate. She also had hair still on her remains. So with them looking at it, they were able to determine that her hair was fairly thick. It was dark blonde or light brown in color. It was also noted that her dental care that she had received in her lifetime was extremely poor. And this is because of the state of decay or advanced state of decay of her teeth in her mouth. She also suffered from several herniated discs in her back, and they felt that these would be like identifying markings, but nothing really came of it, unfortunately. For years, they tried to identify this Jane Doe, and finally they would make a break in the case almost 30 years later. So this year, Fairfax County Police Department partnered with Othram to use DNA testing to figure out who this Jane Doe was. And luckily enough, they were able to determine that she was Sharon K. Abbott Lane. Sharon was last heard from in 1987. 1987, and her body was found in 1993. At the time of her being found, she would have been about 34 years of age. So their guesstimation of age is actually pretty good. So this case is still being investigated to today, but it is a triumph that they finally were able to identify her. Number 5 for today is Anna Kane. So in Reading, Pennsylvania, the body of 26-year-old Anna Kane was discovered on October 23rd of 1988. Her body was discovered in a wooded area, and she was found with baling twine or baling twine around her neck. It was revealed during the investigation that she was strangled, and then her body was dumped in the woods. 15 months after her death, in February of 1990, the Reading Eagle, which is a newspaper, received a letter from a concerned citizen about information regarding the Anna Kane case. Now, this information is only information that would be given only or known by the killer himself or herself. Whoever wrote this letter left DNA on the envelope, and the DNA that it was held onto for decades, for the day they would finally be able to test this DNA. And finally, this year, 2022, the Pennsylvania State Police were able to identify the killer of Anna Kane with genetic genealogy. Her killer was identified as Scott Grimm. Now, unfortunately for Anna's remaining family members, they wouldn't be able to see Grimm pay for his crimes because he died in 2018. So that, my friends, is the first 5 of our next set of the identified and solved cases of 2022. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you in our next video for Vlogmas. Bye!